I guess we should get underway. Welcome everyone on behalf of the Steering Committee of the Public Humanities Network of the CHCI. For those of you who haven't met, my name is Jim Ellis, and I'm the director of the Calgary Institute for the Humanities at the University of Calgary. And I'm delighted to welcome you here to today's meeting. So we do have an agenda for the meeting, which was sent around. But I thought I should start by acknowledging why I'm the one chairing this meeting and not a more familiar face. As you probably know, the steering committee of the CHCI has had a little bit of turnover in the last year and a couple of, I would say, very significant losses. Teresa Mangum, who you all know and love from the Obermann Center at the University of Iowa, has retired, and we celebrated her work for the Institute of the Network at the last CHCI. And Nicholas Allen, our beloved leader, is sort of stepping away from the leadership position that he's held, I think, basically from the beginning. These two have been guiding lights for the public humanities for as long as anyone can remember. And Nicholas in particular has been a force behind the steering committee, organizing the online sessions that we've been having, leading the charge at the CHCI, establishing the awards that we're going to be discussing later, all the while running a very vital, one of the most vital and respected public humanities programs in the country, well, in the world, shall we say, at Georgia. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank Nicholas and Teresa for all of the work they have done, for their advocacy for the public humanities, which have not always had the kind of acceptance that they have at the moment. And most of all, for being very welcoming presences within the CHCI. That's been very important and appreciated. So thanks, Nicholas. And hopefully we can celebrate more in Berlin if you're there. Now, apropos of the changes, you'll notice on the agenda that we will have a discussion towards the end of the meeting about going forward with the steering committee and also the leadership of the steering committee. But first on the agenda, we wanted to ask about reports from any of you about public humanities programs and projects that you're involved with, that you've seen. One of the real values of this network for me has always been just hearing from other people about what they're up to, hearing about other programs and projects and how they're faring and how they got them off the ground and so on. So if anybody would like to share what they're up to, that would be great.
I guess I can, if that's okay. So my name is Victoria Stewart, and I just started earlier this month as the Assistant Director of the Humanities Center at Wayne State University in Detroit. So I just finally got my email address about a week ago and can now communicate with humans. We do a lot of both internal humanities work across disciplinary sectors here at Wayne State, but we're also doing a new initiative that's really going to focus more on public humanities called the Detroit Humanities Hub. And that's part of the reason, the biggest reason why I was hired is to help make this happen. And so it'll be a way for academics and practitioners in the community to connect with different public entities and groups and even people in order to do publicly beneficial work for the community and beyond. And so my prior experience actually was with a rural university in Upper Michigan up until last year. And so, but I have worked a lot actually in Detroit. I have family from here and stuff. So it's very exciting to kind of be back and to start something new. So I'll probably be doing a lot of eavesdropping on things that you all do at your centers and kind of learning the ropes about different things I can do at a larger university. So I'm glad to be sitting in here today.
Well, very warm welcome and congratulations on the position. And it sounds like a great initiative at Detroit. Anyone else have updates, announcements?
Is anybody going to be at the National Humanities Center at the weekend? Yeah, you're going to be there, Victoria. It'll be nice to see you. So there's going to be, I'll put it in the link. I'm glad you'll be there. There is a boot camp about running humanities centers and institutes. I put the link up. You can have a see who's going to be there. Many familiar faces from public humanities, but I'll be happy to give you all a report with Victoria next time whenever we chat about what went on, but it should be good, I think.
For anyone who's going to that boot camp, I would love to hear how you like it, because I'm in the process of envisioning a director's retreat for CHCI. And so we're aiming for that to be Q3 of 2025 as a potential first iteration. So I'm mostly in information gathering mode, and we obviously don't want to replicate things that are out there. Our main kind of angle would be that it would be access. We would want this to be like a relatively affordable, but probably an in-person experience, and there would be scholarships. So yeah, anything you glean from that boot camp or other such trainings, I'm really up for hearing about.
I think the critical thing was a spa hotel, but I'll let you know.
Oh, I'm sorry, and I didn't introduce myself properly. I'm Aaron Fay. I'm from CHCI. I'm the Membership and Diversity Officer.
And just following on the information of that, Aaron sent around, I think, but I think it's on the front page of the CHCI website. The World Humanities Report was just published. And one of its recommendations was advancing the public humanities. I think that's on the landing page of the CHCI, isn't it? So people might want to take a look at that as well.
I'm happy to go, if that's okay. Just want to introduce myself. It's my first time at the Public Humanities group. My name is Philip. I'm from Ontario, as I mentioned earlier. But I'm currently working on my doctorate in France. But I started last year an organization with a couple colleagues called the Great Lakes Institute for Public Humanities. It's a kind of para-academic organization. We're trying to produce humanities programming outside of a university context. And so our most recent program was called the Environmental Humanities Summer Intensive. And that took place in July on Manitoulin Island in the north of Ontario. And we had participants join from all across Canada and the US, actually, who spent 3 weeks on the island learning permaculture and homesteading skills, while at the same time following a course of reading and seminar discussions, and we had guest lectures. So it was quite a success. We were pretty happy with it. We're going through a kind of rebranding right now, so we need there's nothing I can share at the moment. I mean, we have a website, but it's not very good. But anyway, yeah, so it's kind of a new thing. It's at kind of the intersection of environmental humanities and public humanities, but we're pretty excited about it. And I was really excited to learn about CHCI. I had a quick conversation with Aaron recently. And yeah, I'm just glad to be connecting with all of you doing great work and hoping to I don't know, tap into this this network. So thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for that. That sounds great, actually. And do keep us posted on that. I mean, there's certainly people here at Calgary who might be interested in connecting with that. Other updates? Allison.
Thanks, Jim. Hi, everyone. My name is Allison Keith. I'm the director of the Jackman Humanities Institute at the University of Toronto. And I just wanted to talk about another public humanities initiative in Ontario that we're involved with, which is the Provocation Ideas Festival, which is run by a former executive director of ACUFA. And has a series of programming around themes like social justice, democracy, the environment, that it's been running in Toronto for 3 years and also in Stratford, Ontario for the past 2 years. And Mark Rosenfeld, the director, has the ambitious design to take it national, to run across the country. It runs in May and June in Toronto, and then there are not subsidiary, there's also programming in Stratford in the fall. So that's been quite successful in bringing people from from non-campus, non-university environments to the campus, but also to non-campus venues as well.
Sounds terrific. And again, keep us posted, especially if you need other Canadian sites. Not to make this an all Canadian thing, but you know, we're moving the network up north, that is. Uh, other updates?
You know, I'll put on my Berkeley hat for a second. And in my first year at Berkeley, I was tasked with surveying campus and seeing what sort of public humanities activity was going on. And most of it was centered in lecturers and kind of big grant funded initiatives. So kind of the scale was either tiny or humongous. The stuff happening in the middle, there wasn't much. So we're putting together the very beginnings of perhaps like a skills workshop for our faculty and grad students, just real basics. So I haven't thought about these things in quite a while, and so I'm looking for models because a lot has happened in the last 3 years in terms of resources. There's a lot more now. So if there are basic kind of intro to public humanities projects, like the kind of process of creating a project, like those nuts and bolts, if there are resources that you found helpful in communicating to your faculty and grad students on how to do it, please let me know.
Josh.
Yeah, to that, Aaron, I was thinking we hosted Jeff Wilson recently, Public Humanities Journal. And so the program I'm involved with, Holding History here at UW-Madison, my co-director is the director of Arts Administration in the Business Center, in the Business School here at UW-Madison. And we wrote, this is a how-to issue that's going to be coming out, and we wrote, and we're working in the revise resubmit stage tomorrow, is that, you know, sort of the opportunities for the ways that, say, arts administration, where it came from, how it kind of grew up, and how we sort of have ended up with these two separate programs that are doing very many of the same kinds of things. And sometimes the questions I ask of Sarah as a business-minded person annoy her and help us make it better. And sometimes the questions she asks me annoy me and make it better. And so that was one thing that came to mind immediately, because it's always been, Sarah Muddy and then I was actually, you know, so I thought the how-to issue when it comes out will be a great resource for that. And also I'd be happy to, you know, to share anything I've got. But I was also going to say that one of the things, speaking of those in between, like events, we've always done this smaller event, this paper making event, where, because we do a lot with craft and book history and media history. And this year we were able to team up with the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies here and get some additional funding and really lean into the environmental angle. We always pull water out of Lake Mendota and do it with local fibers. And it was really, say, a terrific event for us this year. And it, just doing that then brought in some other community entities who want to be involved in on the fiber side of, and the plant side of things next year. So that has been something that's been small that now is medium, and I think I see the bigger picture now.
Thanks for sharing. That's awesome. Yeah, these things cascade, don't they?
Other updates? Shall we move on then? Okay, well, you can always jump in later. So the second thing on our agenda, one of the innovations actually that Nicholas spearheaded in recent years was to try to make this network more of a year-round thing, rather than just having, you know, a session or two before the CHCI. And so in the past couple of years, I think it's been a couple of years, maybe 3, I don't know, we've had online sessions featuring public humanities practitioners, sometimes from the network, but I think sometimes not, or sessions devoted to issues around the public humanities. And a lot of these were recorded and are on the, on the website, the CHCI website. But for example, we had last year a talk from the Black Studies Collaboratory at Berkeley. We had a workshop by Leslie Ann Knoll on design of public humanities and social justice. Prior to that, we had Timothy Eatman and Jack Chen did a special workshop with about, I think, 20 or 25 people on reckoning with settler colonialism and imagining just futures. And so these kinds of events have been really good, I think, for keeping the energy going throughout the year. And so we wanted to ask if people had suggestions for similar sorts of things. I seem to recall there might have been a bit of money somewhere for this sort of thing for honoraria. Perhaps Nicholas can remind me if that's true or not, remind us. But we'd be interested to hear if people have suggestions for some kind of talk. I mean, these sorts of things are good too for, those people at centers who can't in fact go to Berlin, but would like to keep involved and, keep hearing things about new projects and new issues and things like that.
Lee, do you think the kind of work that you're involved in might be an interesting with the people you're in this sort of informal public humanities you're talking about? Do you think a group conversation might be interested to talk with us about what you're up to?
You mean me and my co-founder?
Yeah, perhaps, and maybe some people you work with, and even if is some of that work already going on in Europe?
Not in Europe yet, but I do know somebody I've been in contact with who did something similar in Cairo for about 10 years. I think he's left that organization now, and they've had some difficulties, but it was pretty successful, I gather, at the time. And I know there's another network called the Micro College Network, which is kind of like a bunch of people who want to start sort of smaller schools, and most of these have either like a mandate to do like gap year programs or things like that. And they all tend to have different kind of specialties. So I was, I've been in contact primarily with one of the more active members of that group called Thoreau College in Wisconsin. And they had me in to teach a course at over the winter. And so Jacob Hunt is the guy who runs that. He's really great. But yeah, so everybody has their different kind of specialty. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question at all, but I'm sure lots of these people would be happy to get a platform to share their ideas.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'll write to you after.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the link. This is cool. I could just like conjure anything and a link appears in the chat.
Aaron, is there a theme for the meeting in Berlin?
Yeah, not officially yet, but the committee's talking about a combination of the two initiative themes. So we have a new program called Initiatives, and I should get the wording right. So the idea is that there'll be one annual theme for the initiatives, but this being the inaugural year, they issued two. So they are human craft in the age of digital technologies, which will have a lot of AI in it, we imagine, and global justice and human practices. I'll put this in the chat. And the deadline for participation, rather than, it's not really an application because we want everyone to participate. It's December 1st.
So I wonder...
so back to your question, the annual meeting likely will be a combination of these two things because at least 3 sessions will involve the initiatives. But there's also the backdrop of Germany, of Eastern Europe. And I know authoritarianism is on the minds of the committee. And so there'll be a bit of that too.
I'm just thinking, Jim, and maybe it will be a way of including Philippe as well, but if we had 2 events, maybe, I don't know, one to do with each theme, and then we could ask the network for people to suggest for each conversation, and we could have a sort of a public humanities related intersection with the 2 themes that would help people know about it. But maybe it also might allow, with Philippe, those people who aren't necessarily, as you say, going to go to Berlin, or those people who are in these micro institutions or para public humanities, to have a voice in all this too. That would be good. Do you all think that might work?
Mhm.
I'll just flag that the initiatives will be having an online workshop, which is a bit of a, these are the projects involved in the initiatives. And that will happen in Q2 of 2025, so our spring. And here I'll put some of the language there, just not to say that these 2 things can't complement each other, but just to know that that's happening as well.
Should we, I mean, it's on the agenda anyway, but should we just jump ahead and talk about the initiatives right now? That was 2 items down. But since we're already there, maybe we should just lay that out. But, and which is not to push away from what Nicholas said. I think that would be a really interesting way of creating a kind of synergy, especially with smaller centers, if we ourselves had some kind of thing. But so I don't know how many of you would have been present. There was a town hall 2 weeks ago, maybe, I don't know, that Guillaume Rattel chaired to introduce the new CHCI funding program. So it's, and Aaron can jump in and correct me at any point on this. So it seems to be replacing the Global Initiatives program. And I got the sense that CHCI, and again, correct me, has redesigned these to allow, I think, and encourage greater participation from the membership. And one thing that struck me was there was a significant emphasis on the public humanities in the discussions. There seems to be a real interest in having public humanities participation in these 2 initiatives. So as Aaron said, that's human craft in the age of digital technologies and global justice and humanities practices. And so it seems like, and it'll be a kind of, is this right, a kind of a loose coalition of projects, some of which are already happening and you can ask to join the initiatives. Others are projects that you want to do. And there's a certain amount of funding at different levels. 5,000, 10,000, 15, and 25,000 for projects. And I think Guillaume said that they anticipate 12 grants for each of these 2 opening rounds of funding, which I think start at, I think the call is for December 1st, is it?
Yes, the deadline's December 1st. I'm just checking if it's 12 total or 12. Oh, yes, it is 12 per initiative. Thank you. Yeah, so as far as the platform goes, I think the real opportunity for public humanities is that we all love Humanities for All, that database, but it's no longer being updated. And so for me, as someone who's really invested in this field, I like that there's a new platform where we can kind of see live what's happening that year, like the real live projects that are happening right now and where the field is currently, for both the digital technologies and public and the global justice initiative. Because that was a real loss for me, not having that database having the funding and resources that it did a few years ago. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
So it seems like they're open to receiving different kinds of projects.
Oh yeah, sorry, and I was going to respond to that too. So you're exactly right. So the former model for this, the previous model for our research grant was Global Humanities Institutes. And the main difference between the 2 in terms of this network is that GHI's Global Humanities Institutes required a global collaboration across 4 or 5 institutes around the world. This doesn't. This could be for a local project and with your local community partners or local collaborations. So that was always something that folks asked of for the GHI, like, can we do a local project? And the answer was no in that case. But in this case, we're inviting that.
So they do, on the website, there are different examples of the kinds of projects and the kinds of scales. And so I just chaired a meeting of the Western Humanities Alliance, which is a group of Western US and Canadian centers. And it seemed, and I was suggesting there that it would be kind of perfect for 2 or 3 centers that wanted to look at the Colorado River or, you know, resource extraction or something like that and do some kind of symposium between the 2 of them. But it also looks like you could have a local public event with your humanities center and other collaborating public institutions or whatever. So it does seem to be very open, I would say. And as with all these programs, I think if you get in on the ground floor, you've got a way better chance of getting the money. But maybe that's just my cynicism. The call is pretty rapid, though, I would say December 1st. So you might want to check that out.
It's also not onerous. I mean, we really just want to be able to list your project. And so the form itself is very brief. And yeah, especially if you already have something in the works for the time frame, it's really just plugging in the information you already have.
And so the participating organizations, whether or not they're funded, you guys are going to be doing kind of virtual events. And then, am I right in thinking that some of the funded projects are going to be presented at Berlin?
That's exactly right. Yeah, all participating projects will be featured on the platform, but then a select few that we fund will have session time and then also receive funding and also travel support for under-resourced centers that are participating.
So to return just to that point earlier about having something in the network, if you were saying that one of the meeting was going to be in the second quarter, and if so we could certainly send a message out again in November to the network telling people about the opportunity. But perhaps, I mean, is there value in having a Zoom conversation between people who might submit projects in the first quarter of spring that would be public humanities focused? Is it worth us something talking about, or is it redundant with what the CHCI is doing essentially?
I think it could be, I mean, brainstorming, I think, is always good. Yeah, I mean, that could be a useful conversation. Were you thinking sometime in January, February?
Maybe,
you mentioning quarters,
it might help. It might help
yeah,
spread the word.
yeah.
Maybe it's not necessary. I mean, if we didn't do that, is there anything anybody else would like to talk about? I'm just conscious of Berlin coming up and having a purchase in that, but maybe we'll get to that with the award. I don't know.
Hmm. Well, perhaps if there is a veritable tsunami of interest in the steering committee, maybe the steering committee can meet in the next 2 or 3 or 4 weeks and come up with a plan for that. Okay, let's go to the awards, which we skipped over. Unless people have questions, especially for Aaron, because he can answer them better about the CHCI Initiatives Program. The information seems pretty comprehensive on the CHCI's website, but are there any questions for Aaron? To put Aaron on the spot? Test his knowledge of his own initiative? Okay, so the Public Humanities Awards. So those had their initial year last year. Where are my notes for that? So we wanted to have a discussion about the wording of last year's call to see if there was any changes that people suggested, talk about the timing of it when we want to announce the awards, some kind of date for submissions. I think last year it was January that we had people, end of January perhaps, come in, and then we notified people in 2025. So just to remind you, so the awards are kind of an opportunity to shed light on successful and interesting and innovative public humanities initiatives, to give them some kind of prominence, and I think, and also attention at the national conference at the CHCI. So last year, you may recall, we awarded 4 awards, 2 awards, 2 honorable mentions. And then there was a session at Berkeley, chaired by Ulka, which I think was terrific, actually, to highlight these projects and just to, you know, put one last bit of light on them. The winners last year were the Oklahoma Center for the Humanities at Tulsa for their project Pathways to Freedom, the Humanities Institute at UC Santa Cruz for Watsonville is in the Heart. And then there were the 2 honorable mentions, the Drescher Center for the Humanities at University of Maryland, Baltimore for the Baltimore Field School, and the Wilson Center at the University of Georgia for their collaboration, Culture and Community at the Penn Center National Historic Landmark District. So we had a really great panel at Berkeley, and so hopefully we can do that sort of thing again. The way we did it last year was the adjudication committee was the steering committee minus anybody that was connected in some way to a nominated project. So I think there were Josh was there, and I was there, and Teresa, and maybe John. Can't remember. Anyway, it was lovely, actually, hearing about all these projects. It's in some ways, I think we should just, you know, give an award to all of them. You're all doing great work. But it's nice also to be able to put a real focus on super successful and innovative projects. So I don't know, did people have a chance to look at the call? The language, is there a way, Aaron, of quickly sharing the screen, or
Yes, you want me to share that CHCI page with the...
Yeah, if you could.
Mhm.
So there's the business. So, you know, we had people, they could self-nominate, or they could nominate somebody else. I think by and large, it was self-nominations. It really, that makes the most sense. A 3-page proposal, which seemed to be, from my perspective, just about the perfect length, highlighting these 5 or 6 things. And the steering committee did try to adhere quite closely to thinking about the things we asked for when adjudicating the awards. So does that all look good? Are there changes that people want? You know, we could just change the year from 2024 to 2025 and let it go, unless people have other suggestions.
Aaron, am I right to think that we could, if we do this again, that the winners would be able to present in some sort again at the meeting in Berlin? Would that still be agreeable?
Absolutely. The only thing is that last year you all had applied for a grant from us in, like, for this deadline that just passed, and we were able to approve that funding and have it sort of waiting for you, so that you could give out that travel support. And Nicholas, your center managed that. And so this year you all didn't apply for that. The next deadline is in February. And so theoretically, that timeline still could work out. Usually we make that selection within a month. The only thing is that, let me see. So I'm thinking also of our annual meeting scholarship, which is separate.
Mhm.
And so there's a deadline for that in early February. So it'll open for applicants in December along with regular registration. And so we're giving folks till February. So that might be another avenue that you could use. So I'd say those are the two options. I think the better one is the membership activity fund, is asking for the funds directly from us versus we're relying on the scholarship.
Sure. Okay. And if somebody needed to, if we did do it and if someone needed to absolutely book a flight for some reason beforehand, we could always work it out from here, and we could work out how to move the money around after. If it came from CHCI, we could do that. Okay. And then I had one more question. Maybe it's, I only asked this because on my mind, I don't mean to intervene, but there was a question of doing this in collaboration with the Public Humanities Journal. Is that something we need to talk about as well? And it may not be this year. I just thought it did come up and we never actually talked about it before.
Who is, sorry, can you remind me who's the leadership of that journal?
And the people in Harvard.
Yeah, Jeff Wilson.
Right.
I mean, maybe a way around it might be if we, what about if we, so if you all are open to having the competition again, it would be very easy to run. And we did it and got it into the program of CHCI. Maybe we could ask Jeff to be the chair of the panel if he was going to go to Berlin, or someone from the journal. And then at least that would give us time, maybe whenever we were in Berlin, to talk about what the third year of it would look like, since we haven't got around to it this year. Does that seem like a welcoming compromise?
I'll also point out
That's right. There's
Zoe,
co-direct,
who's the
sorry.
co-editor.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, she's in the UK, so being in Berlin, it might be more. Yeah.
But would that work? Would that be nice?
Yeah, I mean, if they're interested, I think that's a great crossover pitch in some way.
It seems it could go, you know, sort of work this way just as well, right? Where perhaps seeing who gets selected and then working with that group to think about a special issue and what that might be, and using the time at the conference to work that out. And I think it could work just as well this way as the other way.
Yeah, and Josh, you know, you said there, we could also invite one of them to be on the selection subcommittee if they wanted to.
Yeah, that's true.
I'll also share that the journal has an of the moment category for submissions, and this might be really appropriate for that, because it's supposed to be about things that are happening right now.
You're determined to make me contemporary. But I'm happy for it to go again. I think it worked well last year. It was enjoyable, I think.
I remember this having so many amazing proposals, and sort of the process of reading them, I learned a lot that I wanted to emulate. But I was going to add, I was trying to think back, Jim, to the process of adjudicating, and in my memory, I remember looking at, going out to websites quite a bit, so there's sort of a description. I wonder, if we want to ask more specifically for any sort of additional or supporting materials, visual or otherwise. Maybe that's just more onerous. Maybe it's just fine for us to go to their website, but then ask them to point us towards a few pages. There were a few times that I kind of found myself not sure which part I should most be looking at in relation to that project. And not everyone, I think, had the same level of so in many ways we were allowing there to be these sort of supporting outside materials, but not necessarily stating it in the call.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point, because I mean, the other thing we don't want to do is to weight things against tiny programs. So that, if we say, supporting materials welcome, and then what kind of supporting materials, and do I need to build a website now? And, but, if they're there, I don't know. What do you think, Josh?
Maybe a simple line about supporting, feel free to include an additional page supporting materials in the form of web links, images, because you could just, if it was an event and something happened, you could just include a one-page PDF with some, images that are to kind of show what was happening in that space.
Yeah.
Or if they have a brochure or something.
Yeah, that sounds sensible.
I'm mainly concerned about not what we've all brought up, the onerosity of it. Let's, not make it harder to do, such that somebody might feel they have to, bring in a designer and who has time for that.
Yeah. And I think that, just to reassure others, I think the committee was also quite sensitive to the size of the project and the size of the institute that was supporting the project and so on. So it wasn't just gigantic centers with fantastic materials and, long running programs. I think we were, tried to keep our eye on, one person shops that were doing amazing works.
Watsonville project was a great example of that. It's much smaller, but clearly needed that web presence to tell its story.
Mm-hmm.
I drafted a little sentence that we could possibly add that doesn't sound too threatening. Links to existing websites and media.
Sure. Fantastic. Can you just sort of word that so it's optional as well? You can include something like that.
Sure.
Great. So again, not to put too much on the future steering committee that hopefully will come into place fairly shortly. But maybe this is something, or should we just say that it's going forward? Let's just say it's going forward. We'll put the call out in November. Is January 31st the right time, given what Aaron has said about funding deadlines for actually getting to Berlin? Should we say, for example, January the 10th, which then it could be adjudicated by the end of, well, it could be adjudicated quite quickly, but certainly by the end of January. And would that make it easier for people to apply for funding?
We say mid-January. Well, January 10th sounds a lot after the holidays, doesn't it? But mid-January, is that okay? Like another week after that, maybe? Doesn't take that long to look at them, does it?
No. January 15th? How is that?
Beautiful.
Okay, and then aim to have it done,
What
by
day is
January
that?
30th. What's that?
What day is that? Just make sure it doesn't maybe fall on a weekend. And
It's a Wednesday.
Of the
who
year.
has anything else to do on a Wednesday?
Yeah. Great. Okay. And then the steering committee can decide whether or not they're going to invite one of the co-editors of the journal to join the adjudication. Even if they don't end up doing the thing at the CHCI, it's probably really good for them to be involved and just see what's going on with the network and with these projects. So I think that's a great suggestion. Okay, 13 minutes left. I'm mindful of Nicholas's tradition of always trying to end these things early. But we do have the last, I think, is it just two things? The call for new members of the steering committee and also discussion of new leadership for the network, which is basically the same thing, I think. I don't know how people want to proceed with this. I thought it might be best, well, not best, one idea, this is not the best idea. One idea would be, again, to say that people could email perhaps Aaron or perhaps me or Josh, I don't know, expressions of interest. And I thought it might be good is there some other way that we can circulate a call for interest for joining the steering committee? It would be good to get the word out beyond the 8 of us here present at this meeting, some of whom are already on the steering committee. And also to think about diversity as well across the network, diversity of all kinds, regional diversity, Again, size of institute, and, you know, all the other kinds of diversities that we think about. Is that the best way of doing it? Saying, please email expressions of interest? I mean, it was kind of more ad hoc in the past, I think, wasn't it, Nicholas? It was just email Nicholas and and join the committee.
Yeah, which I suppose this will be a version of, but I think you're right. I mean, and there's no essential number of people either. It's just the fact people who are committed to be present really is the only requirement. I think we always did struggle with, you know, the one thing about the CHCI being global and having a global representation. It's just very hard when other people are in very diverse time zones to, you know, on top of everything else they do to take part. So that's just something to think about. But yeah, I think it would be great to send an email out. Maybe Aaron, if we could do it through the CHCI, even that would be great as well. So the network, if you didn't mind. But and I think it's easy enough to express what the workload of it is. I don't think it's onerous. It's usually enjoyable. It's always been a nice group of people, so we could quite easily write that too. I mean, I don't know, is there value just while we're here and thinking about, even from the people who are on the steering committee at the moment, to think about who would take over the chairpersonship of the thing. You know, because it does need, even if it was just for this coming year, just to make sure that there was, like, you know, we're not missing dates with CHCI, that Aaron has someone he can talk to, you know, all that kind of stuff. Would anybody be willing to do that? It's like Banquo's ghost.
Since Olga's not here, can we just nominate them?
Oh,
That does seem sensible.
Okay, yeah, and like Elizabeth and Alison, Victoria and Philippe, even, I mean, if this is something you'd like to do, please tell us. It's always been an open and inclusive group, I hope.
I agree. The group has been extremely welcoming and inclusive. Not just this group, but all of CHCI so far. So I really appreciate that. And it's tempting, but I am just settling into my doctorate program, and I'm not really sure about what kinds of things I can take on. I don't really have a good sense of my
Oh, of course.
my availability at the moment. Maybe in a couple months I'd reconsider, but at the moment I don't think I could accept. But thank you.
And that's the other thing about joining it, is that, I mean, even if you didn't now, if someone expressed interest in the future, we should frame it as such that you can come along at any time.
And as for me, I mean, I'm certainly interested. I would just have to know what's involved. I mean, you're lucky to have me at a time when I first started at this job. And so it's still kind of wide open what I'm allowed to do, but also I'm also just learning what you all do. So if there's a way that I can be of service, I'm always interested in learning about it and seeing if it makes sense for you all.
Thank you.
I'm also just sorry, I turned my camera off because I have like braiding hair, because that's what I'm doing today, is braiding. I also have not even started my position as a associate director of a humanities center at Vanderbilt. So I'm just here as a fly on the wall. Things will become, yeah. So things will become much clearer as I move forward.
Well, we're glad to have you here, and congratulations on your role too.
Thank you.
And congratulations on Vanderbilt beating Alabama. It will be the end of the university, however.
I know.
I have a friend who's a Vandy alum who nearly fainted. So, well, okay. Sorry, Jim.
I was going to say, well, how about this? I mean, why don't we put out a call for expressions of interest in the steering committee and ask for those to come in perhaps in the next month? And, you know, and then one of the things that the steering committee can do is decide on the leadership structure. But up until that point, I mean, I can be the ad hoc contact person for that.
That's not a very good title for your future CV when you look back on all your glories.
Yeah, sure. I'll be away at least half of that time, so good luck finding me in London. But anyway, but you know, if Aaron needs somebody to be a point person or to raise a question to, So maybe we'll do that and say the steering committee will meet, you know, in a month and then work these things out in late November. How does that sound?
Sounds brilliant.
You
The
know,
most,
might we say nominations as well? People are always
Yeah.
very quick to nominate others, and you know, they don't have to accept, but you know, I think it's also it would be nice, right? If you know, if any one of us were nominated by someone else, and we can then still say no, but it may help us build a core of people who may later on say yes.
yeah, good idea.
Yeah, no, excellent.
The most educational part of being involved in this has been technically sending the emails out to the network, and how many out of office replies you get every time you send an email.
So did I hear you say, Nicholas, you were willing to draft a paragraph on describing the board or not?
Well,
Did
I'll be happy to do it. I'll send that to you and Aaron. You can have a look.
And then we can just fire that out tomorrow. You know, expressions of interest and or nominations to be received by, I don't know, November 20th. Is that a Sunday?
I never realized you were such a deadline-driven, proactive. I know for this.
Get it done.
Is
Yes.
this a Canadian thing?
November 20th is also a Wednesday.
Please, you're
Perfect.
thinking about this. Thank you, Philip. Please. Yeah, he knows all this. Yes.
Wednesday is just the best day of all. Okay, so is everybody happy with all that then? Okay, so there's 5 minutes left. So if anybody has anything else to say, now's your chance. Otherwise, we can adhere to tradition and end early.
I just have a quick question since I did mention just getting my new email address. Aaron, do I email you to make sure that I am in the mailing list with everybody or?
Yeah, sure. You can email us or email me. Here, I'll also share with you like a direct link to just sign up for the newsletter, which is
Okay,
public.
great. Sorry.
No. And also for you all who are just sort of starting out in your positions or looking for resources or questions, if you have kind of more specific asks, like you want to know how other centers run this kind of program or this kind of fellowship, you know, feel free to email me and I can put together things for you.
And can I come
Also,
back?
for
Sorry,
new
Jim.
directors, there is the CHCI's mentorship, the new mentorship program that you might want to be aware of.
Yeah, a lot of people have been enjoying it. The next deadline is next August. We're just doing it on an annual basis because it is, I've realized, a lot of work for us. But you know, like you know, it's not like you're going to change jobs. Hopefully, not next year. So participate next year.
Is that available for assistant directors though as well, or?
But yes, yeah, it's for all staff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You had mentioned briefly in an email, Aaron, about people wanting to have more conversations about like how to do things. So just to go back to Jim's question, maybe we should come back to this the next time. About online conversations, maybe that's the kind of thing we should be doing, like how to, like what different kinds of public humanities programs there are, fellowships, all that kind of stuff. Just especially since there's so many new colleagues coming in, you might like that. So
Totally. In North America, that's the main demand.
okay, well maybe that's the answer to our what kind of online conversations we should have. We can come back to that. I will ask Chair Ellis.
Online conversations. Got it. Okay, great. Well, thank you all for showing up this morning. This has been good. Email your nominations to Aaron or I, and we'll see you at the end of November.
Thank you.